we're seeing a huge amount of change in financial services. And question for both of you. I'd love both of you perhaps to put in your own words, sort of paint a vision for what financial services looks like, in the next 5 to 10 years.
I think in my opinion, so financial services is really helping the customers, which is the businesses and the consumers, to live their life better, or growing that business better, save them time, save them the hassle to dealing with a lot of kind of time-consuming procedures, give them that instant sort of user experience. I think the sort of next generation of financial services will focus on really about the customer journey, to make financial service product part of the lifestyle of the consumers, and also part of the expansion journey of the businesses. Not only kind of help them to deal with the finance side of stuff, but also to help them with the entire ecosystem in terms how they actually set up the company, how they create the initial bank account, how they get the first card issue for themselves for business expenses, and how they actually give that card to the staff for corporate expenses. That's kind of one thing. The other thing is I was thinking, about financial service as a platform to empower sort of connectivity and other businesses to building more innovative product through API. So I think that's kind of a two big sort of biggest revolution going to happen in financial services.
Anthony?
Yeah, well, certainly I completely agree with Jack that in terms of consumer choice and the consumer experience, that's going to be really key. That has to be on a platform of great security as well. People demand a great level of security. We demand a high level of security as well. So from that perspective, nothing builds or depletes trust more than either having good security or losing that aspect. So that will be a key, and always will be a key in the next 5 and 10 years. I think the other aspect, and we're just on the cusp of it now, is open banking and open data. For the last couple of years, we've had lots of discussion around the regulation and around the technology that sits around open data. The exciting thing in 2020 and the next 5 years will be how those user experiences start to evolve. And again, picking up on Jack's point, that integration of payments to the point where they become almost invisible, driven as a result of open banking. So I'm really excited to see what the next 5 to 10 years means, particularly in relation to open data.
So let's talk a little bit, Anthony, about Visa. It is a $400 billion company, so it's one of the largest, maybe the largest financial services company in the world, but certainly up there as one of the largest financial services company in the world. It's an absolute giant. Been only listed, I think now 10 years or so since it IPO'd, and has had incredible growth. One of the things that big companies sometimes find difficult is how do you embrace younger companies when, just because of the sheer size of the organization. Do you want to talk about why it's become such a focus for Visa to partner with young fintechs?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and we would certainly describe ourselves as a 60-year-old fintech company. Innovation is deeply laced within our veins and our DNA from that perspective, and our business has been built on partnership. Now, traditionally, those partnerships have been with large financial institutions, but the last decade has seen us move to make sure that we're also inclusive in relation to the way that we work with fintech organizations. We see some of the great experiences that are being evolved out of the tech companies, out of the neobanks, and it's really, we're obliged, and we absolutely love working with those new companies to build out those new experiences. So it was important for Visa to make sure that we were open for business, and we made it very clear to our existing clients and to our new clients and people like Jack that Visa is very inclusive and wants to be part of that journey. Because, as I said, we love working with the tech companies, and we see it as a really great way of building amazing experiences, both for businesses and for consumers.
Jack, let's focus on Airwallex for a moment. It's certainly, of all the companies I've seen and been involved in my career, it's probably the fastest, it is the fastest growing company. The rate of growth is pretty extraordinary. People forget sometimes that, Airwallex is less than 5 years old. Talk us through what do you attribute the success to? What do you attribute success to? And not just the fact that Airwallex has been successful, but just the incredible rate of growth you've been able to achieve. What have been the factors that have really enabled the results you've achieved over the last 5 years?
I think as a sort of young company, we set our vision very, very clear from the get-go, is to become the infrastructure and platform to help businesses of all sizes to scale internationally. We basically see a very big trend in the last 20 years. So businesses migrating from offline to online, and the nature of kind of businesses doing online is naturally kind of distributed globally. There's so many channels nowadays, like those marketplaces and platform for people to starting up that business. And the hurdle is a lot less and getting less and less in the last 5 to 10 years. And obviously, we wanted to doing everything we can around the ecosystem to help this business to successful. I think that vision, that long-term vision really help us to set up those short-term strategies. So when we think about strategy, there's a couple of things that we really bet on. The number one is infrastructure. That's the one of the sort of specific thing we really like to partner with Visa. So instead of getting a sponsor bank, in Australia, that we become a direct sort of principal member of Visa. I mean, that sort of partnership will give us the leverage of the infrastructure so that we can become the principal issuer of our product in many countries across the world by partnership with Visa. And that will give us the benefit from a cost and efficiency perspective, a long-term advantage to compare to sort of other sort of business models. And the number two is, I would say, really understand where the business is going. So we see, the businesses around the world have this trend of evolving to what we call modern businesses. And the actual workforce is getting more and more diversified. People thinking about, as a freelancer or designer, 20 years ago, I mean, freelancing is quite a new concept. And nowadays, 30% issue workforce is actually contracting or freelancing. And each of them are actually an individual business. So how can kind of building a long-term strategy and to help those businesses to start up from the get-go to evolving to become the default financial service toolkit for those businesses, not only domestically, but also at a global scale, is something that really helped the company to shape and grow. And the number three, I would say, is still the talent, right? So this incredible talent we have hired around the world and able to executing with the vision we set stone. And that's will be probably the sort of three things that worked really well for us.
And I'm not gonna let you get away with that answer so easy, because you didn't talk about yourself at all. You didn't talk about your co-founders. And Jack, for anyone who knows Jack, is incredibly humble. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in this room. There's a lot of budding entrepreneurs in this room. Not every company, and so there's a lot of tailwinds you've talked about that have helped you grow the business. You've talked about bringing great people into the organization, having incredible talent. But not every company that starts out on the journey that you have kind of 5 years ago has achieved the growth and the scale and partnering with amazing global organizations like Visa. I want to talk about what are some of the things that you've done that perhaps, and you and your co-founders and your other leaders, that maybe differentiate you from other companies that you've seen that have enabled that success? Because I think people would really value the input.
I think As a startup founder, I think one of the things I like to share is that founders should spending time on things that would creating value, long-term value and compound value, which is hiring, culture, product, and customers, right? So those and code, right? So those sort of things, it's not something that you scale, but you actually able to creating compound value over a long period of time. And I think that's something that we did really well. And the other thing is about setting not only sort of long-term strategies, but also short-term tactics, right? It's not really sort of strategy, because strategy takes time to implement, where tactics, you can just do it straight away. So from 0 to 1 and sort of, I guess, 1 to 10 in the initial phase, short-term tactics is very important to getting something executed and live as fast as possible, and getting feedback from your customers, and able to build and listen to your customers' feedback, and building the product as you go to fulfill the customer demand is very, very important. I think that's probably the two things that we have done really well. And the last thing we talk about, probably, I would say, a global ambition. From our point of view, financial services is probably the last industry that hasn't been, I guess, disrupted by technology. And the local market is predominantly dominated by the big four bank, which, to be frank, I can't even remember when the last time the big four banks launching a product, and how many people in this room actually heard the big four banks are launching a product, and what is the product roadmap in the next sort of 12 months or 24 months? What are the exciting things that can help people in this room to grow that business and growing that startup? I think this is something that we think is very important for us, is that to have that level of transparency and ambition to our customers and to our employees, so as a company, to let them know where the company is going in the next 10 years, but also in the next sort of 12 months, as in where we're going, and keep them informed, keep our customer informed as well.
And let's talk about Visa a little bit. And so, the thing about being a really large global business is it brings with it a lot of advantages in terms of scale, in terms of ability to invest, huge customer base, partnerships, brand, brings with it a bunch of challenges in times of disruption. Could you spend a moment talking about, from a Visa perspective, how you see the opportunities, where you see the threats, and how the organisation is going to mitigate those threats?
Yeah, again, it's a great question from that perspective, and we're a firm believer that the rising tide of innovation floats all boats, and that means that the whole market is improving, the experiences are improving for all of us, whether we're businesses or consumers. So we embrace that technology change. Like I say, it courses through our veins from that perspective. I think what's important to us, and what really became important to us, is just taking a look at the way that we operate and the way that we interact with technology companies, with fintechs, and with the new banks that are coming to market. Traditionally, our client bases are banks which have thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of employees, and they have many, many product managers, and they have teams and teams of salespeople and marketing and so on. To be frank, the fintech companies that we work with are far smaller. They have tens of people, and they don't have that ingrained level of loads of people with that level of expertise. So we quickly identified that it was important for us to make sure that we were able to share the experiences and to help them scale, to provide them with the consultancy and to provide them with the guidance and to get them to market quickly. The process of licensing that Jack alluded to earlier, that used to take months, and we've speeded that process up. So we've made it, hopefully, Jack, quite an enjoyable experience now, where it used to take a long period of time to be in that position. So we've had to adjust to that to make sure that, like I say, that we can work well with these partners, and that these partners want to work well with Visa as well.
Okay, and I guess a question for both of you is, and it's probably relevant to the previous session, was talking about innovation. I mean, one of the things that cynics will always say is, people always say now's the time for financial services, now's the time for AI, now's we've got to worry about disruption of big companies. But usually there are catalysts. And can you talk a little bit about, and Andy, you might have touched on one or two of them earlier, but talk about the catalyst for why you think the next 10 years, both of you, is going to be far more profound in terms of change to financial services than the last 10 years. What are the catalysts for that massive, rate of change that you're expecting?
Do you want me to go first on that one?
Sure.
Well, I guess, if we look at it historically, and I'm showing my age a little bit, the advent of access to the internet changed the way that commerce worked. And then we saw the evolution of e-commerce. And then in the last decade, we've seen the introduction of smartphones and m-commerce. That's also brought with it a whole range of additional security layers, which means that biometrics get involved in the process of making payments as well. So I think the next 10 years will be building on a lot of those building blocks. The last 5 or 6 years, we've seen the advent of APIs become far more prevalent, even financial institutions and ourselves opening up our API sets so that the edges of VisaNet are more accessible and that organizations like Airwallex can tap into them. Airwallex have launched with a set of APIs as well that are connected into other systems. And that's leading towards those invisible payments. So the idea that an action or an approval creates a transaction rather than manual intervention being part of it. AI can play a role, absolutely. But the API set that sits behind it are the founding stones.
It's that reduction in friction that you think is critical.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on top of that, just better consumer experiences. Everybody lauds the Uber payment experience, that invisibleness of it. You get out of a taxi like a rock star and walk away without having to get your card out and tap it. They are the sort of experiences that I would expect to see a lot more of in the next 5 years.
Got it. Jack?
Just to adding on top from what Anthony just said, the like of the mobile penetration and the like of sort of the digital experience really massively evolved that invisible payment experience. But also, there's as I sort of touched on earlier, there's a lot of platform businesses have arisen in the last sort of decade. The like of Amazon, Uber, Airbnb, in almost in every single vertical, as those platform businesses allow individuals or two people sort of start up can now starting up that business on top of those platform businesses. There are companies like Shopify, there are company like Zero, there are company like us, to almost acting like a modern business toolkit to help those companies to set up the initial bank account. When they actually wanted to accepting online transaction, we help them to get paid. When they wanted to set up a bank account in the US, now they can get a bank account without flying there within basically instantly. If they wanted to get a car, they can get a car instantly. So that sort of experience is start sort of evolving, just started from now. And that modern business financial service toolkit would I think, will become almost the norm in 3 to 5 years' time, that business are sort of starting, or when they actually wanted to expand it overseas, they are expecting there's someone like that, to basically help them to set up the bank account, help them with accounting reconciliation, paying tax, even set up a company. So how that, I think the ecosystem now is sort of getting ready for that change. And the other thing is about, I guess, API, right? So, because of the API now, not only we can helping our customers directly, but it also provided the possibility for other startup to building something on top of API to help their customers, with what they actually need in terms of financial services. That's going to be very, very interesting to see how that's going to evolve in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. And the last thing I would say is how, I guess, consumers and businesses consume data, and how those data would able to help consumers and businesses to getting a service better from a financial service point of view. The big data technology, the open banking now even sort of Europe allow, and making them more like a regulation sort of, receipt is still sort of paper-based and have to scan as a PDF and have to get OCR to recognize what content in there. But now, I mean, there's new regulation coming out in Europe, European countries, and the standard is XML. What it means is that can be real-time consumed as a data and into the tax agencies and also into the digital banks and also into financial service or fintech company like us. We can consume this data, store those data, and predicting customers and businesses' financial behavior based on those data, but also providing a level of transparency into the government agencies.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let me turn now, because you guys, I know everyone is sitting on their edge of the seat. Anthony, Jack, there's an important partnership between Visa and Airwallex, and hand over to you guys to talk about the partnership. It's very exciting. Who's going to go first?
Oh, Jack, it's your day.
Yeah, so I mean, the last thing we probably like to announce, so Airwallex have joined the Visa sort of principal membership and become an issuer of ourselves. What it means is that we can issue a card with our own BIN number. So if you look at a card, the first sort of 6 digit is called a BIN number, which is the financial institution identification. Basically that we have our own BIN number so that we can not only issue to customers directly, but we also can issue to third parties, which is our customer's customer, using our API. And we're going to launch this product today in Australia. We're gradually to roll it out into UK, Europe, Hong Kong, and United States in the next 12 months. And I really appreciate sort of the support of Visa to making our licensing process as easy as possible. And I hope that we can pass this benefit to the general public and the startups and businesses in Australia to help them just to have a better financial service experience in terms of payment.
And I'd love to get your perspective briefly.
Yeah, look, we're delighted, and congratulations to Jack and the Airwallex team. So Airwallex have passed through the Visa FinTech Fast Track program, which was a shameless plug. For those of you in the room, please come and talk to myself.
Say it again, the Visa
FinTech
Fast Track
FinTech
program.
That's correct. Which really is there to help organizations like Airwallex to get up and running as quickly and as smoothly as possible. But we talked before about evolution and the importance of the consumer experience. And there's been a lot of focus on the consumer for the last decade. Small businesses and corporates have probably been a little bit left behind. And bringing that same level of great experience to businesses is exactly what Airwallex are doing. So I think there's some catching up to do from an industry perspective for businesses to get that same level of experience and that same level of integration that consumers have. But Airwallex is doing that, and we're really delighted to be here today.